it seems to me like you've probably been on more records than people know.
Yeah, a lot of them. Sometimes people have me sign something. I go, "Are you sure I'm on this?" I go, "Yeah, I mean, that's right now."
Yeah, that's me.
At one point, I think we'd counted 600. We must have miscounted, but I'm sure it's over 300 or 400.
Just during your entire career, or just during COVID?
Just the pandemic.
Oh, just the pandemic?
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? This is Ryan and Russ from American Musical Supply, coming at you from beautiful Ridgefield, Connecticut. We had the chance to sit down with Billy Sheehan of Mr. Big and many, many other acts and bands to talk all things of songwriting, the craft of actually playing the bass, and the beauty of how it's kept him alive all these years. I mean, you're the first guy I could think of that took bass and in my mind, and maybe there were guys before that, but in terms of making it a lead instrument. And obviously you're a very proficient musician. You could be a bass player and be in a band and drive the ship. But at the same time, you kind of busted it out. And I think you made it okay for a lot of bass players to go, look, I'm not just going to be part of the rhythm section. I want to rip a little bit.
Well, yeah, I guess it's hard for me to speak about myself, but people bypass the fact that for years I was just playing songs, song after song after song by every band and every genre you could imagine. And that was great training for my ears. So when I did go off, it made musical sense. It wasn't just a bunch of flailing, you know, or at least I hope I'm being accurate about my own self.
I would agree with that for sure.
You know, because that's, and a lot of guys, you know, somebody come out, YouTube my solo and post it, and somebody else will YouTube a solo. And then the comments are, all he ever does is solo. And I go, but that's not true. That was 5 minutes of the show. You missed the other 2 hours. And To Be With You and Just Take My Heart and Wild World and, you know, all the songs that I have performed on bass that were
for sure
standard bass.
Right.
You know, so, but we started doing unaccompanied solos back in about 71 or 2.
Oh, okay.
We played the song Mr. Big by Free, and there's this Andy Fraser bass solo in it. Yeah. But one night I just said, hey, during the solo, you guys just stop. And so they loved it because they could go get beers and talk to girls and hang out, and I'd be up there, sweat dripping off me. And then they'd come back and count it in, and we'd finish the song.
But, you know, there's a huge history of that, where there's a lot of bass players who might be, you would call them busy players, but they still serve the song. I mean, Paul McCartney is a great example of something like that.
Yeah, James Jamerson.
For sure.
Man, he's all over the place.
And that's it. You know, so someone might go, well, if I isolate that track, oh my God, he's overplaying. And then you hear it in the context of the song and you go, I don't want it to be any different than that. Do that, you know?
I think a couple of McCartney examples. And in To Be With You, I play the before the second chorus, which is just Sgt. Pepper's before. I don't really want to stop the show, but I thought you might. That's the exact line I took from him for that.
Oh,
it's funny.
So it was a rip. A good rip, an homage.
Good writers write, great writers steal. So
there you go.
So you talk about influences too. I know one of them I've heard you mention is Tom Bogert. Is that
Tim Bogert?
Tim Bogert from with Playing with Beck.
Initially Vanilla Fudge.
Yeah.
And then Cactus, and then Beck Bogert and Appice. And later on, he went on to Musicians Institute, one of the main guys there. He passed away, sadly, about maybe 4 years ago. I was good friends with him.
Great player.
And what a wonderful man.
And a great singer.
But he described his playing as James Jamerson, the psychedelic version of James Jamerson, because they were kind of a psychedelic band. And he was just brilliant moves that he made, every bass player in that time period of that age group, of that bump and demographic, if you will, was just taken with Tim. He was just so great. So we just put out, Carmine Appice, the drummer, just put out a Cactus tribute record.
With Joe Bonamassa?
Yeah, I played with Joe Bonamassa for Parchment Farm. They called me and said, hey, we want you to play on Oleo. I go, that's good, but could I do Parchment Farm? So I said, okay, and I ended up doing both of them. And so I think Steve Stevens is on the Oleo.
He's great.
Song. He's amazing, yeah.
And that's funny because it's a lot of guys who, other than the projects that you know about them, they played on a ton of sessions. And I think you did too. I mean, obviously we know David Lee Roth and Talas and Mr. Big and Winery Dogs, but it seems to me like you've probably been on more records than people know.
Yeah, a lot of them. Sometimes people have me sign something. I go, "Are you sure I'm on this?" I go, "Yeah, I mean, that's right now."
Yeah, that's me.
And during the pandemic, I had people. I never advertised, but people just wrote me out of nowhere and said, "Can you play on a track?" And I got smart about halfway through. I got to hear it first before I say yes.
Yeah.
The couple of them I said yes to were either really not together, and we made it work, or just I'm an ear player and learner, so it would be a lot of work to do some proggy thing with every measure is different from every other measure. So and I say, I'll have to charge a little bit more for my time if it takes me 3 days to learn it.
Right.
I gotta memorize it so I can lay it down. Because if I really know it, I'm going to perform it much better than reading it off a sheet or whatever. So I tried to do that. But yeah, we did about, at one point, I think we'd counted 600. We must have miscounted, but I'm sure it's over 300 or 400.
Just during your entire career or just during COVID?
Just the pandemic.
Oh, just the pandemic?
Yeah, incredible.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Now, do you feel like because your reputation precedes you, do you feel that some people are going to call you because they're like, I want someone ripping, like, tapping bass lines, or is it like, no, I want the Billy Sheehan feel all over this, where you don't necessarily have to solo or anything?
Yeah, it's funny because I'll just play it straight up. I'll do how bass I should, but they go, no, do more, do more,
do
more.
Your thing.
So, and I try to give them both. Like, I'll give you a straight track, and then I'll give you a track that's, over the top a little bit. And sometimes, depending on the circumstance, and then I'll do one that's completely out of control, and you choose whatever you like. But I generally just do the first two, a straight track, and then a little bit, because I don't want. Again, if I've lived with the piece for a while, which I try to do when I record it, I get an idea what would work and what would not. And sometimes a lot of nonsense is not going to do anybody any good. So I just try to keep it within reason.
So, new album coming out. Speaking of now your own material with Mr. Big, what can we expect? I know we've heard the single and just the writing that's gone into it, the way that you went the recording process with busy schedules and the like. Can you give us a little?
It was really tough because we had no time, and I didn't have time to contribute it much to the writing. They let me do what I wanted to do in the sessions, but again, what I want to do sometimes is to play, a bed for the song. Sometimes people expect, insanity full time.
Sure.
I'm only part time. But it was cool because I had to approach it without knowing it too well, and do a lot of things on the fly. Like, okay, I'm in the middle of this thing. I'm going to try this move, and I get done. You guys okay with that? Sure, yeah. Okay.
Have you ever had anyone say, no, we're not okay with it?
Yeah, sometimes. No, I'll pull it back there. And I say, sure. Because when I'm doing a session, I do it for the session, for the song. If somebody says, straight eighth notes, you got it. I'm totally cool with that, and if no matter what they want. We had a great songwriter named John Statham in Nashville. He had this song for me, and it was just so great. And I'd said to him, man, if you come up with 10 or more of these, I'll do a record with you. So he came up with like 50.
Oh, Jesus.
And they were it was hard to pick because they were just so great. We played the record for people. There wouldn't be a dry eye in the room. It says, oh my God, this touching, emotional stories built within a song.
Yeah.
And you don't need much to illustrate in a low frequency area for something like that. So it was real straight. And then on drums, we had Ray Luzier from Korn.
Oh, amazing. We were just talking about Army of Anyone. Have you ever heard that?
Oh, yeah, he's so great. Dear friend of mine. We got a little production team, myself, Ray, and a guy named Scott Bush, who we worked on a lot of records together. But he just, his pocket was great. And he didn't go overboard at all, but didn't need to because his pocket was just righteous. And it came together. And I'm not a country guy, and it's a little countrified. Some of the instrumentation, like a couple of mandolins, a slide guitar, brilliant slide player, a violinist, mandolin, some of the instrumentation that you see on more. And he is kind of a countrified guy, but not overboard. There was no cowboy hats.
Is this something that's out?
Was that?
Is this a recording that's out right now?
Yeah.
And what is it called?
The Struggle is, and a word's crossed out and then it puts beautiful. The Struggle is beautiful.
Okay.
And it's just a great songs, just amazing, really, really great. So, but yeah, that just required me to play. Give me that root note. Here you go. And that's
Well, and
cool.
it's funny because we were talking about this with Paul as well. I mean, both you guys are so technically proficient, yet there's so much feel involved with what you do, and you have a wide toolbox. So like you said, you're not a country player, but someone calls you for that session, you go, yeah, I could do that. I mean, it seems like you're pretty comfortable. Anytime there's a bass in your hands, you'll find a way to have the right part kind of.
I feel that.
Yeah.
From what you're saying there, I feel that that's the case. And again, sometimes I don't have anything. I've never really had anything to prove. I just wanted to play, and if I hear Oscar Peterson, West Side Story, wow, I want to. It's so great to be able to play, express yourself musically in any way you want, and so sometimes that involves some notage.
Sure.
Sometimes it doesn't.
Notage. Like, is there anything that you've had thrown at you that you go, man, this is so simple technically, but it's a bitch to play? Has there been anything like that where you go, man?
Not so much, because usually the simpler things are wide open. You got plenty of room around everything to compartmentalize it in your head and learn it. I did have the opposite happen, though. Something came to me that I thought, oh, I don't know if I can do this. This wonderful singer in Japan named Mari Hamada, and she's kind of got a great voice, dresses very stylish on stage, like beautiful gowns and stuff. But she's pretty proggy in her music.
Okay.
And so I'd gone through this with her earlier. She sent a track, and it was tough. But we got through. Greg Bissonette played drums on it too. And I remember at the session, he came up to me and go, Billy, how did you do on the track? I go, oh, it's tough, but I think you got it. He goes, I had to hire a transcriptionist.
Wow.
And the whole wall and the drummer was covered with notes from how to play the thing, But he could read, so it was good. I had to do it by memory. I made some notes. But so I said, but she was kind enough in the interim to fly me to Japan and have her play for a 30-year anniversary.
Okay.
So when she sent me tracks again to do, initially I was going to think, I don't know, I want to hear them first before I say yes. But I thought, hey, she was just kind and generous to me. No matter how tough it is, I'll figure it out. And wow, it was, the bass was all done on keyboard.
I was
MIDI.
going to say, it sounds like it was sequenced or something. Yeah.
And my engineer and I were looking at each other like, holy cow.
Yeah.
So I said, well, go home and come back in 2 days, and I'm just going to woodshed this. And it was all done low. I had to use a 6-string bass,
Oh, wow.
all super low, super fast lines, way low, where you had to choke everything down and make sure the one note stopped before the next one started. And really, it was one of the toughest things I ever recorded. So I haven't spoken to her about this yet, but I'm going to ask her if she'd allow me to put out, once her record runs its course after the fact, can I put out left channel me, right channel the MIDI guide bass, and just call it Man versus Machine?
See who won.
Stop. I got it eventually, but woo, it was a hard one. And another one was Steve Vai, Freak Show XS. He gave me the recording to take home and learn, and I learned it. Came back the next day, and I had it down. It was a tough one. A lot of oddball moves that made great musical sense, but were tough to articulate. And we're ready to go, and he says, "Let me see." So I showed him the way. He goes, "Yeah, that's good, but that's the wrong fingers." He wanted me to finger it the same way he fingered it.
Oh, come on, yeah.
Now, it's harder to unlearn something than it is to learn it sometimes. So I had to go,
that's true.
"See, let's do the other song. I'll come back tomorrow." And I did. And I went home and I had to forget everything that I had worked on. And we got it eventually. We laughed about it, of course, though. But Steve is just a genius player and a musical composer. Just great. I always enjoy working with him. But that was another one. I had to unlearn it and go back. And
But it worked out.
it did. Yeah.
So this is the latest iteration of the Attitude?
Yeah. It's the, I'm not sure which number it is, but maybe the third version with a, there have been 3 different neck to body joints.
Really? And what are you hoping to go for there when you tweak it?
Well, this one was one of their ideas, to have the 2 screws go in at an angle.
Oh, I didn't even
grab
notice
the
that.
neck and pull it into the pocket. And the original idea, we had the neck extended with a lip underneath,
right,
and screwed in from inside, and that prevented that shift. Because in all Fender instruments, you can push this way,
Yep. Yeah.
and you'll push it out.
And do you still have the old P bass?
Sure do.
Yeah.
Been on the cover of Vintage Guitar, the fold out of Guitar World.
That's iconic for sure.
The Playboy and Penthouse fold out. There's been both of them.
So this is a better mousetrap in your estimation in terms of building on that.
Everything that I did to that bass and more. Better neck to body joint. It's cut in here a little more, and it's got the extra fret, because the P bass, and they only go up to E flat.
Right.
And most rock music is in E.
Yeah.
That high E is
That half step is everything.
very handy. And you can bend that to a G.
I was just going to ask, so we're talking about Winery Dogs and Steve Vai and Mr. Big. The projects that are yours, how deep do you feel like you typically get into those outside of the realm of the bass? Do you ever go into the mixing stages, into the production stages?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any projects more than others?
Yeah. The record I mentioned with John Statham, I was involved in the overall production. So I guess they could call me the producer of the record. I rely on a good mixer to do the right thing, but I'll also bring things up if I need to. I'm lucky. I've worked with really talented guys. For example, Jay Rustin, he did the new Mr. Big record. On the first Winery Dogs record, we were brand new together and feeling each other out. And normally you would send your finished tracks to the mixer, and he would do his mix, send it back. You'd make notes, send it back to him. He'd do changes back and forth and back and forth, sometimes up to 8, 10, or more times, depending on the situation. We sent him the tracks. He sent them back. We said, we're done. He got it.
First time.
We didn't have to say a thing. So I met him later at an AM show. I never met him personally, just spoken on the phone. I said, Jay, what a pleasure to meet you. I go, man, the bass tone on the Winery Dogs record is great. What did you do? He goes, there was 3 tracks, a direct, low, and high. Because I took all 3, put them all at 0, meaning
flat,
no increase or decrease in volume, and that was it. That's all he did. He didn't touch it.
Well, and it probably helped that the performance was spot on. I mean, there's something to that.
Hopefully it was. But either way, the just sounded great, and the way it worked with the drums and guitar, it was really, he did a great job. So sometimes I don't have to say anything at all, but I prefer that, of course, because then the guy obviously has a handle on it. But I'm in writing and production. The gentleman I mentioned, he called me the syllable sheriff.
Oh,
because those syllables got to land in cadence.
It's true.
And when they don't, I hear a lot of songs nowadays that how did they let that go? I use examples of the greatest songs ever and the classic songs, and how those syllables land where they're supposed to land. And so he referred to me as the syllable sheriff after a while.
Did you get a badge? You should have a badge for that. I think that would be.
I better get one.
We'll get you one.
Deal.
So when you come to a session, for you, I mean, a bass player, we often talk about the traditional role of a bassist is locking in with the drummer, and so when you come,
everything,
right? And then, but so obviously playing with so many different drummers and so many great drummers, and also so many great vocalists. What's more satisfying? I mean, when you go, oh, I can't believe I'm going to be playing with this singer, or is it like, oh, I've always wanted to work with this drummer, and
I kind of block out the world and just have me and the drummer.
Okay.
Matter of fact, for when God rest his soul, Pat Torpy was with us at Mr. Big. Before we did a tour, Pat and I would go in a rehearsal room and do the whole set for days.
Just the 2 of you?
Just us 2. Just bass and drums. And so I knew every little move and nuance and dynamic that he was doing. I've done that with a lot of drummers, and the first thing I ever learned about bass was that when the bass drum hits a note, you play a note with it.
Yeah.
And before I even owned a bass, the bass player that I emulated was my neighbor.
Okay.
And I went over to his rehearsal. It's just him and the drummer. He goes, "Oh, what's going on?" He goes, when the drummer hits a bass drum, I got to play a bass drum. So I got to, and he was doing it himself back. This is in the '60s.
Right.
He's playing with just the drummer to get a feel for how that works. So I picked that up from him then.
Stuck with you.
So my entire bass career was built on that fundamental, which was, I'm very, very fortunate that it was, because that has helped everything else completely. And as far as vocals go too, yeah, I know I pull way back as soon as a vocal starts. I pull way back on volume, like we're doing a Daddy Brother, na 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 na. As soon as when you're a red hat, I pull way back right away, volume wise. Cadence wise, of course, I'm still the same, but just to make sure there's room for that. And I sing a lot, excuse me, harmonies, and a couple lead vocals here and there I croak out too, but definitely harmonies. And so it's, for me, that's another super important aspect of it. You can't really go wild. Well, Mark King can, or a lot of great, amazing guys can, or Esperanza Spalding can.
Right.
They go wild and still be able to sing like just another person. Amazing. So that I definitely pull back for that as well, whether due to my inability to do both or just common sense.
I would think it's more that you're aware of the dynamics and how a song should have dynamics. And I think that that's the difference between a bassist or a guitar player and a musician. A musician knows when not to play, when to pull back, when to lean forward.
Ensemble.
And you're also a singer. I mean, you know, for instance, a good example of watching you sing and play, I watched you do Shy Boy, which everyone thinks is a David Lee Roth song, and obviously you wrote that. And so when you sing it, I could see it's an intense song to play, but I could also see what you're talking about in terms of, all right, I'm going to back away and get out of the way of my own vocal, not just someone else's.
Yeah. Though I have seen bass players, like I mentioned, too, and there are many more, of course, that can just go
berserk,
anything and sing it. I remember Rory Gallagher doing a dobro of, they said, mixing the barley with the grape again.
Right.
Barley being the whiskey, and the grape being wine. Mixing the barley with the grape again, and on dobro. And he was talking in the middle of it too, in time. And there's just an amazing example of that duality that many musicians have. Pianists, right and left hand. That's another thing as well. Watching Tony McAlpine play with his left hand, do
Keys.
Rachmaninoff
On the right?
with the right hand. Wow. Always inspiring to me to see people like that. They're so they're able to split themselves. I try it.
Yeah.
And we'll drill stuff like that once in a while on purpose, just to push myself somewhere.
Well, I remember there was, I think it was a Crossroads festival, and it was a lot of blues bass players, and then it was you and Steve, and it was like, it was
come Dave, they come up
Tony,
to the front.
I think there
Dave
as well.
and Tony too.
Yeah,
and I thought, this could be a train wreck, because there's so many good players, and it's so many notes, and yet it just blew the door off the place.
Yeah, it was, I think all of us in that particular lineup, Dave Weiner, Jeremy Colson, Tony McAlpine, myself, and Steve, we all had a sensibility to the entirety of the sound and song, as opposed to what we were doing.
That's hard to do.
Had that, and we all generally have that of that group of people I mentioned. Most people I know do have that. Some don't. Some it's all about them. And every band is different. But that was a very fortuitous situation, doing the guitar grabbing thing and all that.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that. We just
did it as kind of a goof,
right?
But it did require some concentration and coordination.
Sure.
But it was intended to be entertaining more than whatever, and it just turned out really well in that situation.
I would say so.
What are the kind of things that you're working on like these days? Just like when you're pushing yourself now on the bass, on
Tons
your
of
own
things.
time.
Really, being on tour is a great opportunity, because I got all day. I worked all day here prior to coming in here. All day to warm up and work on things and fine tune, throw away things that don't work, reintroduce things that I forgot about, all kinds of things. I always come up with new ways to approach things and resolve problems, get things smoother, get things tighter, get things more in time, all that. My 3-finger technique is pretty well developed, but there can always be more. You can always do better. And one thing that happens a lot is I'm doing a thing and I go, okay, now do it backwards. And then it turns my world upside down. And a couple days later, I got it. Wow. There's a couple of moves that I was doing with my right hand that were stumbly and clicky. There's a click going on and a stumbling. And I just pulled the whole thing apart and decided what moves are failing and what moves am I stumbling over, and analyzed it, and then just came up with ways to work that move, just that move alone, in time, in tune, and build it up. And it made, in about 2 days, it made a noticeable difference to me. And I watch myself real close. I'm my biggest critic. No YouTube commenter, hateful commenter could be any worse than I am to myself. Trust me. But it was made a noticeable difference almost right away. And when I do my master classes and things, I usually sit down one-on-one with somebody. Just, well, just play. Let me see what you're doing. They're a little nervous at first. Just don't worry about it. And they'll show me what they're doing. Okay, aha, good, great. That's right. But watch this. That thing you're stumbling over there, and try to fix it. You know, so I do that to myself. After having done, again, during the pandemic, I did a zillion master classes, a little music store near me in Nashville. It was really great because it helped me by resolving someone else's problem, or at least observing what's going on. My chops for troubleshooting came up to a degree where I could start applying them to myself too, which helps. So I'm never at a spot where I think I'm any good, or I'm hot stuff by the farthest stretch of the imagination. I'm always at a spot where I'm still trying to learn or do that one thing. So it's not unlike I'm like an intermediate, right out of beginner player in some ways, because I'm always trying to fine tune something that I can't do.
Is there something like in particular at the moment that you're
I could do
working on?
I can play those three, but can I play it this way?
Jeez. Yeah.
Because I notice if I have to go, I just do 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 in sequence with the 3. So it's 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. But I noticed on the A string, it's just not doing what it should. It didn't sound right. So I isolate that.
Right.
Pound it for a while, figure out a way, and I realized that sometimes instead of just playing 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, I got to start here 1 2 3 1 2 3 on the other string. 1 2 3 1 2 3 on the other string. Start with this finger. 1 2 3 1 2 3. I couldn't even do that when I first started, to isolate that. I mean, I could, but it was stumbly and awful.
Right.
And so I just would just over and over and repeat, and just until my hands are sore, give them a rest, go back to it again. And in a couple of days, it made a distinctive difference in how smooth everything was. Hopefully, and again, in my mind, I'm my worst critic, so if it's not utterly flawless, it sucks. So it's gotta be right. It's gotta be right. So, and I'm glad. And I see some players, sometimes it's hard for them, I imagine, to remove themselves from themselves, look at themselves and go, that ain't working. Because it's just part of...
Well, ego gets involved.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's part of the self and ego, and not ego as an ego trip, but just an ego, and it's just how you look at yourself. It's hard sometimes to back off and go, hey man, you know, I'm not hitting it like I should. Fortunately, I don't know why or how I've been able to really remove myself, and maybe I'm a little too harsh sometimes.
Go one side of the extreme.
Then I should be a little kinder towards myself, I guess, maybe, but no, probably not ever. But just to really, because I want to play the best I can.
Yeah.
And lock in with drums and get my pocket in there. I'm lucky to play with great drummers. Playing with Dennis Chambers really changed my life, because his pocket is like nobody else. And working with guys like that, I really saw edges of me that were, you know, I wasn't coloring in the lines all the time. You know, pretty close, close enough for most people wouldn't even notice. But then when I play with a guy like that, it's like, I get it now. What a difference. And I'm forever indebted to the great drummers I've played with, because their pocket and their timing is something that I weave myself into, and it's been so fortuitous to have worked with guys like that.
So not to go down that rabbit hole, but Dennis Chambers, what ensemble or group were you playing with him in that you had the chance?
Niacin. It's bass, drums, and B3. Niacin is vitamin B3, so we called it Niacin.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
And it was. I've always been a fan of the B3.
Yeah, it's great.
Jimmy Smith, a million others. Well, there was a time when B3 was more important than guitar in a lot of records, a lot of songs.
Sure.
You would hear B3
organ trios and
almost more than a guitar was. So the Young Rascals, Vanilla Fudge, even it shows up in Zeppelin and Beatles too.
Well, that's why we stole the Leslie and put our guitars through it, right? You know, so we could kind of take a little bit of that back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's funny because inevitably, whenever we interview people, we often talk about Van Halen will come up. And a big part of what I love about your style, and what I even noticed that you brought to Roth is the sense of swing you have. You know, a lot of people kind of want to focus on technique and blazing and shredding, and sometimes without that feel and that technique, that swing, you know, you either learn that or you don't, and that seems to inform almost everything you play. Would that be a fair assumption, that there's a certain amount of swing and pocket to what you're doing?
Absolutely. I have one advantage with the three-finger technique, because everything is in a triplet. So swing for triplet, that's all about triplets. So
right.
So for me, I work hard to get the non-swing not swinging.
Oh, you have to play straight almost. Yeah.
So it was kind of a reverse problem, which to some degree was in my favor, I think, when it comes to playing swingier things. The three-finger thing helps. So I work forever doing twos and fours with three fingers to make sure that those are locked in. And then when the three thing comes, it's kind of,
it's just there.
You know, the hot for teacher kind of.
Yeah, the boogie, you know.
Yeah, boogie.
But that's what gets your toes tapping. I mean, it's easy to play a bunch of notes, but without feel and rhythm involved with it, what's the point, you know?
Yeah, volume changes on your accents. I do a lot of things where I'll play fours, accent 1, accent 2, accent 3, accent 4 in various times, accent 1 and 2, accent 3 and 4, accent 1 and 4, every combination you can imagine to get in there, just to make sure you have a good understanding of how those things fall within the context of a song and a live performance.
Well, it comes across. This was a thrill. I mean, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you guys how busy you are.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. It was enjoyable to talk.
And I'm glad you brought a bass.
Was that?
Just to watch you play even while you're talking is like
special extra treat.
No, it is. It's very cool.
Cool. Yeah. I never look back. If I have actually gotten to the top of any of the mountains I've been climbing, you never look down again. You just look to the next mountain.
Right.
And that's your next thing. So.
Well, I think that's what's so refreshing is that you guys have been playing for so long, and yet you still care so much. You're still driving yourself nuts.
Yeah, Paul and I usually share a dressing room.
Okay.
And we're both in there all day long. Paul is he's really a brilliant teacher because he's a brilliant learner. He wants to learn something, and he'll wrap himself around it, and he'll chase it down.
Yeah.
And just to get feel on guitar with slides, learning all these vocals on guitar sliding, but get all the nuance of sliding to a note and all that you need to do as an actual vocalist. I mean, you can play the notes of a vocal line, but it doesn't sound like a vocal line.
No.
And so he's over in the corner doing that. I'm there with my 3-finger and 4 and, you know, all my wacky nonsense there. And sometimes some of my practice just consists of, I know some guys are opposed to the metronome, but I got one on my iPhone. I just put it down and just hit that thing, do various accents in and out and before, anticipate a note, drag behind a note, all those things. And both of us will just go for hours in there and find, hey, time for a sound check. Oh,
yeah.
okay. Come
Tell
on,
him to
do
put his
that.
belt back on. Yeah, well, that's the thing. I think that comes across is your genuine love to do it. I mean, to know how lucky you must be to make a living at it, but to actually really care about being good at it.
Yeah,
it's
that's
learn
the most essential
your
thing.
notes, kids.
I don't know where it comes from in me, but I'm still like 16 years old.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be driving around and go, oh, I got an idea. I gotta get home to my bass. What if I, try to, or sometimes I try to explain it into my iPhone, what I'm talking about. And I get it. And I have no idea what I'm talking about.
You were also driving at the time, so yeah, it's probably not safe.
But I always have my iPhone with me, except for right now. And I always set it up selfie video, any idea I come up with. And I got like thousands of exercise things, song ideas, new ways of playing something, and I got to compile them all and put them in one giant
Archive.
video and follow them out.
Yeah, with all your free time, yeah, you should do that. Yeah,
right, exactly.
I have one last question.
Sure.
What you just said it, the excitement of like when you were a 16-year-old, and I think we feel exactly the same way. Like it just always goes back to when you were a youth, and you have the same excitement when you pick up your guitar. You have any idea from your own prerogative, like why?
Well, a gentleman, I forgot the gentleman's name, but easy to find. This is Your Brain on Music.
Right.
And I think I posted about him, and he actually contacted me one time. Wonderful man, great book. And he talks about how in old folks' homes, people that are, just in a chair, kind of sitting there all day, find out how old they are and start playing music from when they were 16 or 17 or 18 years old. And wow.
Become alive.
Become right alive. My mom, on her deathbed, wasn't necessarily a very sad thing. We knew she was going. She knew he was going. It was she was going to fade in and out, where the whole family was there. And we're kind of sitting around, and my sister goes, put Sinatra on. I had my laptop and hard drive for my iTunes there, which is massive. So I put it on. She right away, oh, that was so-and-so, and she remembered everything about who was in the band, and how old Sinatra was at that time.
Sure.
And he was really young when he was still skinny. When they told him he was too skinny, he'll never make it.
Jogs memories.
But she came right back.
It's amazing.
And it is really true that there's something about that age group there from 14 to maybe 19 or 20. What you learn in that time period really stays with you. So there is something about that age and music that is intriguing and special. So for me at that age, I was learning and figuring out songs, and I put the Vanilla Fudge on, or the Young Rascals, or Sgt. Pepper's, or Grand Funk Railroad, or there's a long list, and play along to those records. So that may have been a factor. But that book, This Is Your Brain on Music, is quite awesome on how it describes some of these things. So that they may shed a little bit more light. But I think because at that age, my whole goal was to learn all these songs and play along, put a whole record on and do the whole thing, flip it over and play to that whole thing, time and time again with all the records I had. It was that kind of stuck with me. So there was still the enthusiasm has hung around, thankfully.
Well, it's evident, and we really appreciate the time. Honestly, as a fan, not just as someone to interview, this has been great. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
We'd like to offer a big thanks to Billy Sheehan for coming out and sitting down with us today. And of course, we would be remiss if we didn't thank our friends at Yamaha Guitars and Basses for making it happen. We hope you enjoyed it. And for more content like this, be sure to check us out at AmericanMusical.com. And be sure to like and subscribe.